The Civil War is being played this weekend, Oregon and Oregon State. Joe, I picked Oregon in preseason to win the Pac-12. Obviously, I'm going to pick them here because I'm going to stay with my pick in the preseason. I think that this is the worst stylistic matchup that Oregon State can have. I've also seen it. I've also seen Oregon play a game like this. It's called Utah. Now, I will admit Oregon State is better offensively than Utah is. So I do think that game's going to be a little bit closer. I also saw Oregon State in the rain come off and play a very tough game against Washington. I just don't think that Oregon State has the green grass athletes on either side of the football to stay up with Oregon. If there is going to be a blowout game this week, to me, I think that this one has the potential. And it might not be from the score, right? Like it might be 34-17, and you're like, oh, okay, it was a respectable game. But you and I know when you actually watch the game, you're like, damn, they're whipping that ass. Oregon's the second best offense in the country. I think Troy Franklin and the boys are going to be able to do some really good things. I saw some things last week against when they played Washington. Rome Odunze having the catches and the production that he has. Troy Franklin is probably, Joe, the wide receiver in the country that nobody's talking about, but has 13
He's got more yards than Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm pretty sure.
Well, he's right there with Malik Neighbors. I think it's Malik Neighbors, Troy Franklin. I'm trying to remember the other one. Just it's slipping my mind. But regardless, Troy Franklin is there. Nobody is talking about Troy Franklin, Bucky Irvin, and the boys. There's been a lot of talk about Bo Nix, which, by the way, let me just pause for a minute.
Oh, no.
Bo Nix would have to have 1,000 yards rushing in the next 2 weeks to eclipse Jaden Daniels. All I'm saying is
it's doable.
Stop.
By the way, the names of the guy I'm joking.
Do you want to go to federal prison?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you did that to me over that take. By the way, two guys that you're looking for that are ahead of Franklin, Malik Washington from Virginia, and then Colin Lacey from South Alabama.
Well, you know what's interesting about the kid from Virginia? Who would have thought in the beginning of the season that would happen?
Well, we talked about this on the first team. The draft show that I do completely exploded onto the scene the way that he's played. He might get drafted. He was not even on anybody's radar coming into the year. So that's pretty cool. But you and I are actually very aligned on this game, Blake. I think that if there is a game that's a big ranked on ranked matchup that turns into a bloodbath, it's this football game. There's two main reasons that I focus on. One, it's the way that they played against Washington and the plays that they gave up in the passing game to Washington. I do not feel very good about that. Secondly, last year we remember what happened. We remember that Oregon State played spoiler to Oregon and completely ruined their chances of playing in the Pac-12 championship game.
That's right.
Last year was Oregon's year. You think that in a rivalry game like this with the college football playoff on the line that they're not going to show up pissed off trying to completely splatter their opponent? This is going to get bloody. I really think that this will. And I know that Oregon State has been competitive and they've fought hard on a week-to-week basis. But at the end of the day, they do not match up well with this Oregon team, who is one of the most well-rounded teams in the country. I don't see very many other teams in college football right now outside of maybe Georgia that can run the ball, throw the ball, and then stop you on the other end as effectively as they can. They are extremely balanced. And Oregon State just does not have the dudes, like you just said, to keep up with them.
I will admit this. All right, last year we talked about that game. Oregon State ran it right down Oregon's throat. I don't think that they can do that this year.
No.
But I got to say this, even though I don't think it's going to happen. I still do believe that there is one area that is a chink in the armor for Oregon that I do not believe outside of one game that they've been tested in. I still believe that secondary is very flimsy. All right. Oregon is 46 in the country in passing yards allowed. Joe, who have they remotely played outside of Washington that can throw the football around?
That's a very good point.
Okay. And so but it's DJU. And I put a little faith into DJU last week. If DJU can remotely, and I ain't talking about even be just who he has been, okay? Like, even if you're the same guy that you've been not against Washington, you have a chance to win this football game because they are going to give up some yards in the air. That secondary has been, Joe, it's not talent. I don't know how to put my thumb on it. I'm going to say something, and I don't even fully agree with myself. Maybe it's a lack of understanding in what Dan Lanning wants to do in the secondary. They seem lost sometimes. Okay, like they just seem like, yeah, okay. They kind of just feel like, they're
not consistent.
They're just not consistent. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. But there's no way in hell I'm putting faith in DJU in back-to-back weeks. None.
So there's one thing though that I am rooting for in this game, just kind of like a fun side tangent. DJ Uiagalelei, the starting quarterback for Oregon State, his younger brother, who is a highly sought-after freshman, has been getting a little bit more run. He got a sack last game against Washington State. I know that was, that game was a blowout, so he got some playing time. I don't know if Mateo gets into this football game, but I'm kind of rooting to see Mateo sack DJ. I think that because how often do we see this happen? Typically, when you have brothers that play, they're both offensive linemen. One of them's an offensive lineman, defensive lineman. One of them's a tight end. One of them's an offensive lineman, or they're like both defensive line. They're usually typically cut from the same vine physically. But we've got a really unique circumstance here where a defensive end is going up against his brother, who's a quarterback. I just think that'd be really fun, to be able to talk shit to your brother and drop his ass. This is something that I don't think anyone even expected would happen, because at one point everyone thought that DJU would have declared. Even last year, I think some people thought that DJU was going to declare, even if he had a mediocre season, and go on to the Senior Bowl and maybe try a shot at the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
They get the chance to play one another. I think it's fun. I think it's a fun thing to monitor.
I do love watching brothers play, and like you mentioned, it's, we just had one on Thursday night, the Kelsey Bowl, and we saw, by the way, our buddy Blaine Crane, did you see the video that Blaine Crane posted on Twitter? It was a dodgeball and it was Taylor Swift. You remember the movie Dodgeball when it was like,
yes,
it was like, and it was a face of, Taylor Swift's face. It was like, Jason, I love you. And then it's a face of Travis Kelce on the other dude. And
yeah.
Dude, that is so funny. I just had to throw that out there. One other thing for me in this game, Joe, that I'm looking in is, look, there's been a lot of run for Bo Nix the last couple of weeks, especially when it comes to Heisman contention. Now, I went pretty stupid last night because Ryan Leaf, who I've had on my shows before, talked about Jaden Daniels would hold the clipboard at Oregon. Okay.
Wait, Ryan Leaf also said that?
Ryan Leaf also said that last night.
Oh, my God.
I'm just going to throw this out here. All right. Air yardage. All right. Meaning the yards that Bo Nix throws in the air to the completion is 70th in the country.
There's a lot of screens.
A lot of screens. A lot of yak yardage for Oregon. Okay. I do think that Oregon State is well coached enough to be able to stop some of those things. You're going to need Bo Nix to hit some plays vertically. Now, if he doesn't and he struggles in this game, I don't want to hear shit. I don't want to hear anything about, he'd hold a clipboard. Joe, I've seen Bo Nix in the SEC. I've seen it. And
that's the insane part.
Let me tell you the more unreal. We talked about the SEC for a lot this year, about them being quote unquote down. And there were parts of the season that a lot of us thought that the Pac-12 might be the best conference. Joe, there's no goddamn way you're going to tell me that right now, because the Pac-12 is down. Now they have, USC's down, Washington State's down. They haven't looked good. I do think that they need to be careful against Oregon State and some of the screen stuff, because I do think they're well coached. Look, we saw Washington try to do it last week, and it blew up in their face. I get it's a raining game. I get all that. Something to watch out for. Your final thoughts on this game?
No, just rounding out what you're saying here. I think that Oregon is such a massive edge over this team. This could be really, really bloody in a revenge situation. And look, Bo Nix has to play the game of his life. I think that everyone keeps assuming that he's going to win the award, but if the guy wants to remain in the conversation, he needs to play a great football game. If he falters any one bit, the foundation of that starts to crumble. And you know what? As I've said before, Heisman voters start paying attention now. They start paying attention over the final couple weeks in these big games. All eyes are going to be on this one by the Heisman voters. You got to play a good game if you want to win the award. Plain and
Very
simple.
true.